which
Yeah,
is...
so the 9/11 false flag fright that they perpetrated, all of that was, again, crisis capitalism perfectly exemplified.
So controlled opposition in the media. We were recently, as I said before, on Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory show, and we were told that their biggest sponsors were Big Pharma. They told us that we couldn't talk about Goldman Sachs or anything to do with anything related to Big Pharma. So they edited out the actual final cut really well, if you saw the clip, but really left out a lot of important things.
So the concept, though, why would they advance suddenly? And if you saw it, you had Glenn Beck in the media and then Jesse Ventura. All of a sudden, they were starting to engage the topics that this organization has been embracing for years, the heavy-duty stuff. Well, they stopped short at sharing about Dick Cheney and Halliburton. As Sherri mentioned, the question becomes, why wouldn't they allow us to talk about Goldman Sachs in depth and the connections here? It's because, primarily, is the only thing we could conclude. The entire operation, as you're going to be seeing by the time we're done this presentation, is about controlling dissidents and controlling the way we think as nationalists. Literally, the concept of America being corrupt. This now is being fed to us so that there's a virtual portal, a media opening that's currently taking place so that they then get to exactly where the report from Iron Mountain ultimately says, as well as the interesting protocols of the Elders of Zion. Back in the 1700s, actually, you could begin to read that document that has been completely twisted in so many ways. It lays out exactly what's been taking place, this concept of controlling the mainstream media to control the mass mind, to bring about globalization, one world government. And that's now where this shift is taking place. We can see it in our own media.
More examples of controlled opposition in the media. Michael Moore, he seems like he is for we the people. If you watch his film Capitalism, A Love Story, he complains about Lloyd Blankfein being the evildoer and the person responsible for why capitalism doesn't work, because he's stealing all the pie from everybody else. But it
dealt with the concept that America, if you remember correctly from the even headline news, America's real estate market was dropping out because of Goldman Sachs had actually again put options or bet that the government couldn't step in effectively and that the housing market would drop precipitously, and that's exactly what it did. And when it did that, all the investors that were tipped off at Goldman Sachs to make money off the crash in the housing industry made fortunes.
So if you look at who is producing his pictures, it's actually the Weinstein Company that is actually funded by ABC Disney, and Lloyd Blankfein is the biggest funder of ABC Disney. So why would he actually produce a show, a movie that talks bad about the producer? And that's part of what controlled opposition is.
Exactly. It's discrediting all sources of information and intelligence. It deals with the Hegelian dialectic of behavioral engineering, social control, whereby if you have mixed messages, mixing people's heads up, they become confused. It's ultimately this concept of thesis. You advance a thesis. One says that mainstream media is telling you that Goldman Sachs is great for the economy and they're helping the government. And you look at the presidents and you look at all the players in the White House over the past several decades, you see all of them are graduate lawyers from Goldman Sachs. And you begin to realize that they're also now beginning to filter in this disinformation or information, propaganda, to have the thesis that says that they're good suddenly now violated, saying that they're bad. Now that's antithesis, and it breeds this mass confusion that's called synthesis. And this is mind control. It is an MK Ultra operation in which we are all brainwashed virtually as a result of what I've just shared in every field. The stimulus generalization goes out, and all of the main players, all of the dissidents, all of the targets of the dissidents get this kind of like discredited or challenged, where we then, as a people, become dysfunctional. We drop out of activism, and we get frustrated, and this conspiracy of silence is really what is doing us in.
And a lot of people get really upset about the fact that we expose some of these people they consider to be their heroes in the truth movement, because they feel that at least somebody has a voice loud enough to get some truth out. But half a truth is not the full truth, and there's a big hypocrisy going on for who these people are really working for. So if you're really going to be telling the truth, you need to be telling the complete truth, and not having to take money from people who you say that are the bad guys, and you're exposing them as the bad guys. That's giving disinformation out to the public, and that's what leads to the confusion that we're all in.
And so part of that confusion also is you look at the leader in the field of the media in our particular genre, conspiracy, realities. It's Alex Jones. Now, Alex has interviewed me on numerous occasions. I wouldn't consider myself a close friend of Alex. Anybody that knows Alex Jones personally knows that he's got a huge ego and that he basically controls a lot. Well, the experience that I had dealt with the fact that I was paying Alex Jones to advertise our excellent, superior silver hydrosol impregnated with 528 hertz frequency, which is extraordinary. It's probably the most powerful thing that anybody anywhere could do that would undermine the pharmaceutical industry, is to advance the understanding that we have been advancing with 528 hertz frequency as a homeopathic resonance virtually of love, love being the universal healer. If you put that in a homeopathic and you couple it with a double silver hydrosol, a double superconductor. Silver is a superconductor of energy. Water is a superconductor of energy. You put a double superconductor of energy, literally giving people love and a vibrational essence in their bodies instantly that causes them to realign with virtually God and what all of nature is celebrating, which is this greenish-yellow color that the botanical world celebrates called chlorophyll, is vibrating at 528 nanometers light and 528 hertz frequency of sound. My book called The Book of 528 is coming out this summer. It's on ebook now. It lays out all of the mathematics. I happen to be blessed to work with some of the world's leading physicists and mathematicians. We've advanced the absolute certainty and proof, what I'm telling you now, that shall undermine and shall ultimately take down petrochemical pharmaceutical cartel with the simplest understandings of how we as natural beings can be sustained naturally, vibrationally, virtually from the music of love. So Alex Jones was advertising OxySilver, and we were paying him good money to do that. I then submitted what I had asked him to do, which was to talk about 528, which he had promised to have me on the show to do a whole segment on 528 and discuss it and share with the public about how wonderful this is. Well, that never happened. We started to get delayed. It was the H1N1 swine flu fright. Suddenly, this whole advertising campaign dropped out. We couldn't get back. Alex Jones had all these excuses, lame excuses why he couldn't produce the commercial, why we didn't have the segment. And come to find out, it wasn't until weeks later that we learned that Alex Jones was sponsored by the top companies producing Silversol for Homeland Security officials on the board of directors. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple minutes.
So what are the COINTELPRO objectives? Well, first of all, if you don't know what COINTELPRO is, it's counterintelligence propaganda. I'm sure most people in this room know what that is. In case you don't, that's what it is.
And it was, most people don't know that it has continued to this very day. It's famous for being active in the 1960s and the early 70s. The targeting of, for example, John Lennon and his assassination. Again, what was he doing? He was advancing love, giving peace a chance. That was his main message. It was in his music. He was actually saying, if you study Working Man's Hero, which is one of his tracks, he tells you to drop out, don't follow the governments, follow him. What he's suggesting as a policy is simply give love and peace a chance. So he was targeted like every other person considered a political dissident. Those people were targeted for COINTELPRO operations and discrediting. For example, in Lennon's case, the concept that you heard that he said, oh, follow me, I'm more famous than Jesus, and that, you know, for that reason alone you should follow. That's hogwash. It was completely twisted and distorted when you go back and you study exactly what he had to say.
So the objective of COINTELPRO is to create controlled opposition, which would be creating dissidents and targeting dissidents, discrediting targets, discrediting themselves, and creating confusion. And so that's what Dr. Horowitz and I are really dealing with right now with the COINTELPRO within the grass movement. I don't know if you are familiar with the work that we're doing. If you've read any of our latest newsletters, you can go to healthyworldnewsletter.com and you can look up the archives on there. But we are dealing with controlled opposition through the COINTELPRO.
And I'd like to add that this whole concept of, again, get this, they create the dissidents because they feed us with this information that makes us nauseous, that makes us very disturbed about our government, our government's officials, and the globalization agenda. I'm not going to stand here and say that I'm in favor of the Illuminati's New World Order agenda. Personally, my bias is that I know that God wants a New World Order too. He doesn't want to have it run by global fascists that conduct genocide under the guise of national security and public health. So we're moving, we're all changing. But the biggest revelation that we have to share today is that all of our heroes are put there by this media, including the alternative media, and whatever we think is a manipulation under MK-Ultra mind control. They create the dissidents, they create our leaders that are putting out dissident messages, then they target the dissidents to create the confusion. In my particular case, we'll go into this a little bit more, I've been heavily libeled over the last several years, and then they discredit their targets in that way, and then here is the kicker. And this is why you don't have this place packed with 20,000 or 30,000 people, which should be here, and the reason why they're not here is because they discredit themselves in the process. And that's what puts out this mass confusion, and that's what suddenly say, oh, we can't trust him, and they go on to something else, and the seats remain empty.
That's why everything that we say is considered a conspiracy theory, and people don't look at us like we're telling the truth. They look at us like we're science fiction comic book characters. So that's why there's not a lot of people here. If this was a Fox News or an NBC presentation by two news people, then there would be thousands of people wanting to listen.
Or even an Amway program, or one of the multi-level marketing programs. I mean, you would have thousands and thousands of people. You know, Brian Hall, God bless him, he's happy if he breaks even from these programs. That is sick, and it's simply a symptom of MK-Ultra mind control generating political dissidence and the corruption within the information system.
And it's the people within this truth movement that there's people here that have actually prevented this place from being packed by their actions, by them discrediting themselves.